Hello, everyone, and welcome to the extra innings edition of the Senior Fraud Task Force. Thank you all very much for being here. It is our hope today that we will be concluding our work and voting on our report. I would like to once again thank all of our members for their contributions, and I would also like to thank our co-chair Joan for working hard over the weekend together to help incorporate and update the changes from our members. Last meeting we had Senator Miller join us, which was wonderful, and today we have Representative Garibay and Senator Fazio to join us as well, so we know that our work will be warmly received by the legislature. Thank you both for joining us, and it's my hope that with all of your help today that we will be able to finish off this charge us today. Cameron will once again be doing the driving to help us make any of our changes, and we definitely appreciate his help and guidance as we go through this process. And for now, I'm going to pass it to our co-chair Joan, and then maybe we can hear from our guests.
Thank you, Michael. And I just again want to thank all of the members for working on Friday and over the weekend to get us their comments and suggestions. I think that we've come up with a really comprehensive report, and hopefully we can get it all finalized today so we can send it off so the legislators can see what we've discussed and think is important for them to look at this session. So I know Matthew just sent over a revised document and has sent over some suggestions, which I think Cameron has already incorporated. But if you, Cameron, are you going to share your screen with the current document or with
Yes, I
Matthew's
will.
suggestions? Does anybody else have any other edits that they have written down they need to email to us, or is it just going to be a discussion? Okay, sounds like no other written edits. I know we're missing a couple of people because of the unusual time that we have, so hopefully we can hear from everybody on the committee before we finalize this. So I guess, Matthew, did you want to say anything about the changes that you had suggested from the final draft?
I certainly can. I'll defer to the representatives and senator if they wanted to speak to us before we get started.
Yes, I agree. So Representative Garibay, would you like to address our task force? Is there any comments you'd like to share with us?
Yes, well, thank you for having, allowing me to be here today with you. I want to thank you, Michael and Joan, for your leadership on the task force and all the task force members working on this very important issue. And even when it's good change, it's not always easy. So I know coming to agreement and working together to come out with something that we can really support. I am very grateful that you're doing things to help protect our seniors. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And Senator Fazio, would you like to address us with any comments?
Well, I appreciate the task force work. I'm very much coming in at the very end of this, just being assigned to the Aging Committee. So I was just here to listen to your work and learn, because this is a very important cause. It's a cause that's important to me. So I appreciate your work, and I look forward to listening and learning more.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today, both of you. Thank you kindly.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We appreciate you spending the time with us and listening to what's been happening thus far.
So we can, I guess, begin this process where let's start with Matthew Antonetti. I think you had just sent us some changes that all looked pretty reasonable. this might just take a quick moment to be able to pull that up. So if we have our version right now as close to the final as possible, you'll see that there's red text. Red is just kind of indicating that it's like a more updated version of the language from previously. And so maybe we can just take a quick moment and take a look at this and see if there's any reflections. I'm gonna go into take a look at what Matthew just sent, because it looks like that's something that we can add in, but I want to make sure everyone was able to get to look at that as well. Stand by.
Yes, thank you. So I just sent those back to the group maybe about 15 minutes ago. I do want to echo the thanks over the weekend, and I'm sure all the hard work and drafting that went into this updated product. So thank you very much. It's it's a good report. So, and I can explain just some of the thoughts that I had in some of the edits as we go through if necessary.
Thank you for that, Matthew. And so on this page 3 that has this red writing in the middle with these themes, does that look okay to everyone? And if so, we can move on. We added a citation to the Healthy Aging Data Report, which we referenced a few times during our meetings.
I think the biggest change in that, the bullet points, was we just turned them into sentence form. I don't think there was really much substantive change.
So now we can look at, so on page 4, if you wouldn't mind scrolling back up, Cameron. Right. So Matthew had made a suggested C on the line that begins the process of applying. Let's see.
Yeah, I had suggested adding the word care after long-term, just to make it clear that it's long-term care Medicaid services.
Perfect. And then a little bit further down in that paragraph.
And then the third to last line, since I think we were revising that it might not be a checklist of questions and disclosures, I changed that to recommendations, recommends simple, straightforward recommendations.
Yeah, it's not really, I changed it, took the question out. I saw that the original suggestion was that you had taken what I had presented as questions and put them in paragraph form. So I don't have them as questions anymore, but I do think it's important that they're bullet pointed, just so it's clear. So you're right, it's not really a checklist of questions anymore. I don't know if it's recommendations, but we can, I think it is more disclosures.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind using disclosures only in that we say the word recommends and then recommendations in the same sentence. I don't usually like repeating.
The task force recommends a simple, straightforward disclosures. Maybe we could take out the word A and just say recommends simple, straightforward disclosures.
Yeah, that's good. And I added, just again for consistency, that Medicaid application assister. That was just more for just consistency.
Okay.
And then I changed the applicant to an applicant. And then at the and after the last sentence, again, just for clarification, completing an application, I'd suggested adding for long-term care Medicaid services and supports.
Thank you. And we go to the next page, top of page 5.
No, we're right where Cameron just typed it. It's Medicare, not right. The word
No.
care. No. I'm sorry. The word before Medicaid. should be-
Long-term care, yes.
Thank you, Cameron.
Perfect.
So the next page looks like a lot of addition. You added the phrase "and financial exploitation."
Either and or since elder abuse, at least statutorily, is defined as the physical abuse. I just thought it'd be helpful to, so for example, in the third line of the paragraph starting the task force, I think it's up a paragraph. Yeah.
Yep.
So in the beginning of the third line, end of the second line says suspected elder abuse. I added or financial exploitation. And I suggest that change in several spots throughout. So. So then the next line, 1, 2, 3, the fourth line where it's the sentence ends or elder abuse, I again added or financial exploitation.
I don't, if nobody has a problem with that, I think that's a good edit. We could probably go back to your compared document
Okay.
and accept those changes. So
Yeah.
Karen doesn't have to go through and type it. All of them. There was one sentence that you removed.
Yeah, and which is actually fine to keep, actually, as I look at it again. So I take that back. As far as the lack of knowledge results in significant underreporting of incidents, I couldn't recall whether, but then in thinking about it, I think there was some testimony as to the percentage of actual reports that are received versus what estimates are for may occur. So I would reject my deletion on that one. That's fine.
Okay, I'm going through because I have your document up on my computer too, so I'm going to go through and accept and reject what we're agreeing on. If anybody has any other comments, just please feel free to pipe in.
And then again, similarly, in the paragraph starting, recognizing that there's the same, caveats with financial exploitation. And then later on at about halfway down that paragraph, as far as the recommendations, with respect to the PSC staffing ratios, again, to address the anticipated workloads that would, correspond, that there would be budgetary support for staff. And I did take out, which I know was my edit, the word forensic accounting and changed it to accounting and financial investigations. Off the top of my head, I don't recall the exact, this is getting a little bit into the weeds, but the job classification, but I do believe the state has, it's not to a level of a forensic accountant, but there are those who are skilled in accounting and financial review and investigation. So I just kept it a little bit more broad to be accounting and financial investigations.
Okay.
Okay.
Looks like your next edits are in recommendation 1. So does anybody else have anything in the executive summary that they wanted to bring up? It looks like Anna just made a comment.
Yeah, just quick sort of editorial comment in the sentence about ensuring budgetary support for, you might be missing the letter A, budgetary support for a PSE staffing ratio. Up a couple lines. Great, sorry, picky comment, but.
Oh,
thanks.
it's good. Thank you.
Anybody else for the executive summary? Should we move on to recommendation 1?
Yep. So it looks like Matthew had added a couple things under number 1.
Yeah, so in the first paragraph, I just added the words non-attorney about halfway down, 1, 2, 3,
A little bit higher, Cameron.
about 9 lines down where the sentence begins, Medicaid application assisters. Yep. So at the beginning of that line, where it begins Medicaid application assisters, 8 lines down, yeah, there you go. I added non-attorney before Medicaid application assisters because I think a little bit later on we do refer to the assisters being quite broad, so it could potentially include an attorney. That non-attorney Medicaid applications do not have the, and then I added authority or expertise to provide the guidance.
Yeah, because the definition includes pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
Individuals, so that's a good edit.
And then below that, to ensure.
And so in the second line here, in the paragraph beginning to ensure, I suggested taking out a prerequisite, sorry, to information be highlighted. Only, and in this section, I mean, I was thinking about, while there are certainly, you know, the skill and expertise is certainly advisable for those applying for long-term care Medicaid supports. It's not necessarily a prerequisite, and I didn't want to give an indication that such absent providing with the application essentially would in some ways deem it invalid or impermissible. That was my concern with utilizing a prerequisite for that.
Well, my concern with not having it be a prerequisite is when would it be required? If we're not required to make these disclosures, you know, what's the point? You know, how are we going to ensure that people have these disclosures?
Well, and what happens if they're not provided? I mean, would the application in some way be deemed, which I don't think legally could be, invalid? I just thought, you know, again, I haven't vetted this past our eligibility program. There may be unintended consequences to suggesting that something be required or a prerequisite. Certainly from if we're talking about something on the DSS website or provided, you know, in the application itself. I just didn't feel, you know, certainly being the agency representative today, that I can feel comfortable with something being required as part of the application from the agency. I mean, I think we've heard the testimony that certain assisters in long-term care settings may not, have that advice or understand who is, pamphlets or otherwise being referred to potential support services. But if we're going to be talking about in all contexts whatsoever, that's just where I'm just trying to play this scenario out a little bit.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I think it's something that definitely needs to be fleshed out, because I think if we think it's important that all consumers, any applicant receives these disclosures, how are we going to ensure it? So whether, I mean, I would never have intended that it would negate the application or disqualify them, but perhaps this is something that needs to be fleshed out if the legislature wants to take this recommendation up. But I think it's important that our report is clear that we believe that the disclosures should be presented to every applicant. I'm just not sure how exactly to write that.
Should we say strongly encouraged? The following information be strongly encouraged and highlighted?
I think that has no teeth. We're basically saying it's not required.
Do any of our members have any other thoughts on this?
I mean, I think what Matthew changed it to, that the following information be highlighted in any materials, is, we're saying that it should be included. So I think you're probably getting to what we want. We want to make sure that this information is included.
Yeah. And after highlighted, along the similar lines, why I added the words "in any materials accompanying"
the
Department of Social Services, again, because I don't think necessarily it needs to be incorporated into the actual application itself, but along the lines of, again, what I think some of the testimony we heard the first day, that there may be materials provided to individuals in long-term care settings that doesn't necessarily highlight what one is able to receive or not through various, assisters. So that's why I added in any materials accompanying.
Yeah, I think that takes care of the recommendation that we believe everybody should get these disclosures. And so remove the word prerequisite and then put in any materials accompanying.
And then it looks like you struck through government agency.
Yeah, and for my thought there was, again, I think we have a potential recommendation, and I voiced it yesterday evening, concern with respect to all state employees, and if there were a potential essentially conflicts check or disclosure, that could again become problematic if every state employee were incorporated into that Medicaid application assister definition.
So Michael and I met last night after the email exchange between you and Matt, and what we had concluded was, the concern was that the government or the state employees shouldn't be part of the conflict disclosure. Is that so? Later on in the document, we did add the word private to the additional recommendation. So I don't know if that satisfies your concern, because just as we're saying, a Medicaid application assister could be an attorney, and so in some cases we have to say non-attorney. We're saying, all of these entities, individual government entity, private entities, potentially could be a Medicaid application assister, and so these disclosures should apply even if it's a government or state employee. But with respect to the conflict, we added the word private to
Okay.
the term so that state employees would not have to worry about disclosing conflicts. Does that satisfy your
Okay.
concern?
Sure, I think that's fine for this then.
So you took out the additional information with respect to the disclosures. The disclosure information kind of got fleshed out. If you scroll down, oh, sorry, Cameron, you still working on that?
It was recommended to replace the word whole with gap up top.
Oh, okay. I like that word better, Jackie.
Okay,
So the red, those were additions, as Michael mentioned. We tried to highlight in red things that were substantively different from the last draft. So this was kind of fleshing out the disclosures. Matthew's edits struck out most of this.
Yeah, again, my concerns were a couple. First, it seems to be a bit technical. So I think from a perspective of comprehension of those who might be applying, that it might be a bit, not understandable and a little legalese for an individual who might be considering an application, as opposed to a more kind of simple language or understandable language for someone who might be reviewing. And then secondly, there's a lot, again, not having vetted through our eligibility staff, there's a lot in these words as far as not getting proper, because there's a difference between being able to apply and get Medicaid supports and perhaps doing that in a way that isn't as financially advantageous to one in obtaining those supports. And so I'm not so sure that not getting proper legal advice can prevent you from receiving benefits. I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, I think you could get the benefits, but it might not be in a way that would be, fiscally advantageous given one's, entire situation. And that so that's really the thread that goes through why when DSS is presenting an application, or if someone goes to the DSS webpage and obtains the long-term care application, that essentially these would be now statements of the state of Connecticut. And I'm not sure this is completely accurate in the aspect of obtaining Medicaid supports. The individual will get the Medicaid services. It's just, are they receiving additional advice and counsel in a way that will make it more fiscally advantageous to the individual, as opposed to, I think, as we heard, just spend down. So that's why I think that I think the complexity of the verbiage might go beyond what one would be, expected to comprehend in the application process. But then two, I think it's not necessarily accurate that this would be a prerequisite to obtaining the benefits, because I think they get the benefits. It just would be through spend down or through other mechanisms that might preserve assets for themselves and their families. So
I think the verbiage should remain. It's based on New York passing, which is actually their legislature. But I would say it actually could prevent someone from getting benefits. It's not just about fiscal. It could mean that they have a spend down that they wouldn't otherwise have. That does mean a prevention of benefits. If they're spending money on care that they would otherwise not have to, that is preventing benefits. So I think it's exactly accurate in what it says. And when it does, maybe the language could be changed at the legislative level and what they would like it to read. But I think the intent and purpose of the language remains, and it's a very good summary of the situations that we're trying to prevent.
Yeah, I mean, just having, this level of detail of language being suggested that it go into the state, wouldn't be in the application itself, but in the materials with this level of detail. Again, I mean, I don't think it's something we discussed during our meetings. I'm not familiar with what the New York legislation is, if it gets into this level of detail into what must be in a state application materials. But it's also, I'm not sure it's completely accurate. That not getting, I mean, being a lawyer, look, people should consult with lawyers on a variety of subjects, but I'm not exactly sure that one is going to be necessarily exploited to the extent that non-attorneys hold themselves out to be Medicaid specialists, even though they cannot provide you with legal or financial. So that's kind of the agency now taking on that if someone is, assisting in Medicaid, is it a misrepresentation? I think that really this is something that would need a lot more thought and discussion before a senior fraud task force is saying that this should be placed into a state of Connecticut, in materials accompanying the DSS forms. So.
I mean, I think it's fairly accurate on what it says. I don't think it's created any misinterpretations in states that have passed similar reviews. And while we may not have discussed this exact language in the task force, everything in it are things we've discussed in the testimony and other events that have occurred. So I think the language, could it be worded differently or softened at the legislative level or to make it more appropriate for the consumer? Sure. I'm not saying it can't be. But the language on its own is fairly clear and straightforward, and it accomplishes what our duty as a task force was and what we were set out to do to begin with, which was deal with Medicaid fraud.
So let's see. So Laura had a comment. She agrees with Matthew that the verbiage may be too high level for the consumer. I'd be interested in hearing from others. Matt Barrett.
Yeah, I wonder if the problem with the language is twofold, and I'm focused in on the part where the language uses the term required, that the legal advice be required. And number one, I wonder if a softer word might be more appropriate there, because the reservation that I expressed previously was that there was a fundamental right to seek application assistance from whoever whomever you want to seek application assistance from, if you're a Medicaid applicant or even a person seeking a redetermination. But when you use the language that sort of maybe leaves the impression that you would be required to, seek this particular type of expertise, you wonder if it starts to bump up against that fundamental, I'll call it a right, to be able to use whoever you want. And I don't actually think that really is the intent here, but I wonder if that's one of the problems with the language. And the second part is just a two-part comment. And I don't suggest that this is about span of control or control, but we do have to recognize that the agency responsible for the administration of the Medicaid program in Connecticut is the Department of Social Services. And so I wonder if they would be more comfortable and it wouldn't go against the recommendation if they were put in better, call it control for lack of a better word, about putting forward the materials that would provide this advisory. And the language I had recommended, and again, I'm not married to it as a matter of perfection, was it read something to the effect of, the task force recommends that the Connecticut Medicaid agency, to the extent permitted by federal law, implement a policy that applicants and beneficiaries of LTSS Medicaid be informed. And again, this next part gets to the sort of like they get to control, as is their authority, in a form prescribed by the Medicaid agency, that certain LTSS applicants and beneficiaries, and I think this is language we were using, may benefit from the advice of an attorney with expertise and experience in LTSS Medicaid. And I won't just read on. I had provided it in writing to the chairs. And I guess the question is, would that satisfy the department's concern if we replace that language with that language, and would that address what the intent of the task force is?
Yeah, I think, Matt, I think something along those lines would be more preferable.
Anna.
And I think I'm maybe trying to say the same thing that Matt was just saying, but I think our goal here is to make sure that the information is stated. I don't know that. I mean, my expectation certainly isn't that DSS would take this language wholesale and be using it to attach to applications. But I think if you scroll up a little bit, just above that solid line, where it reads, the following information be highlighted. Perhaps to address the concerns, we could state something to the effect of, the following information stated in colloquial language, or it makes some kind of indication that the information here is what is important and not the wording verbatim. I'm not sure if that addresses some of the concerns around the language of this, because that seems like a conversation that might get into more detail than what we have time for.
What do you think, Joan?
I think that the biggest difference between what we had in the original and then this additional is, originally we're telling people they have legal rights, right? And then the additional language is going into a little bit stronger language. And I don't know if there's a way to compile some of the additional language into the bullet points. If there's a difference there between numbers 1 through 5 and the bullet points.
Well, after the general solid line with the please know that you have legal rights. I mean, after the bullet points, and I'll tell you, when I first read it, I wasn't sure whether this was included to be part of the intended disclosure or just a narrative paragraph, that the paragraph starting with not getting proper legal advice, if that weren't, if that was just a narrative piece from the task force that, look, not getting proper legal advice may do X, Y, and Z, but not something that the task force is intending be included in some sort of disclosure. I think all the points are valid. My concern is the task force suggesting that all these, points be put into a disclosure statement by DSS. I think Matt's suggestion as to that the Medicaid agency consider, I mean, that is fully appropriate. I think I had suggested something similar to that. But if these points wanted to be brought out in our report, I think that's also fine. But to say that as a task force, we are suggesting that this be placed because it does kind of read verbatim into the materials. That's where it becomes, I think a bit problematic, certainly for at this point. So
Yeah, and so your suggestion would be to take out what you've crossed out and maybe put it into the summary of recommendation 1 rather than in the disclosure. Because as it's written with those lines, that is how it was written, but if you're suggesting we take that out of the disclosure and make the disclosure more succinct what it was before, and maybe adding that 1 line about.
I mean, certainly because these are things that the legislature could consider. I mean,
Right.
we've heard about these during the court, that look, even what seems to be a quote unquote not complex situation can have a lot of nuance and intricacies that individuals, when compiling their long-term care plans, should really consider and could benefit from an attorney in doing that.
Right.
So I think that all these points are absolutely valid, but maybe not in that required disclosure, but certainly findings of the task force.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, because I think the reason to include this is so the legislature knows the details of what we went through, and maybe what's in between the bold lines is the more succinct, easy to understand bullet points. But I think it's helpful for the legislature to know the more in-depth, detailed explanation. So I think that's a good suggestion.
So should we just paste that in, like cut that out and paste it above that solid line after the word applications, or what do you suggest?
Or maybe even before the paragraph that starts to ensure.
Is that the right spot?
We'll have to change the pronouns and just make it part of a summary as opposed to a disclosure.
It's good we work through this and try to have as much consensus as possible. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So moving on here, we have number 2. There's some red writing that has updated language. This is in part based on a recommendation from Marie, but it's been expanded a little bit. Do we have any comments on that? Hold on, Cameron. No comments? Okay. We can continue. It looks like Matthew had added some extra, the financial exploitation terms into number 3, recommendation number 3, so we can go back after and put those in. And then the newer one is number 4.
And my only suggestions in there was to, also have budgetary support to support those ratios. So that was.
Yeah, and you made some changes. Call becomes contact. That sounds good.
Yes, because I think those need to be in writing. So to some, yeah.
Do our members, can they see those suggested changes from Matthew's email he sent earlier today? Do they have any feedback on that? I think I'm okay with these additional language pieces.
Everybody's okay with that?
Oh.
So we,
Go ahead.
we highlighted this footnote. This is, Laura, this is from an edition that you made, and you had sent an email with a PDF of this document. But there was no title even to the document for us to reference, and it just said Department of Consumer Protection on top.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to do that.
We wanted a cite to it.
Oh, yeah, I got it from Catherine Blinder, who's the chief of staff over at the Department of Consumer Protection. And it was something that she disseminated to the Elder Justice Coalition just coincidentally the other day. So, yeah, I don't know. I can maybe find out more information about that from Catherine, but I think it's just something that they put together to share with partners.
Okay. I don't know if there is no site for people to go find it, is it everybody okay with how it's presented here, or do we want to eliminate any sort of a site?
I can, Joan, I can see if it's posted anywhere online. She didn't indicate that it was, but I can ask Catherine and see.
Okay.
That I do have a citation, but otherwise I don't think I have anything.
So the word private here is what we had added to eliminate state agencies having to make any disclosures for conflicts, which we talked about earlier.
Instead of private, should we make it for profit? Because wouldn't that be clear?
So that would eliminate like legal services.
I would think it would, yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just hold on a second on that? If the definition of Medicaid applicator assister might include nonprofit hospital systems providing application assistance, would they, if that's accurate, would they be included? Would they be excluded by using the word for-profit? Whereas if it was private means for-profit or nonprofit. It's just a query to the proponent of that change, because I think they ultimately they decided that anybody providing Medicaid application assistance, including a wide range of providers, would be governed by these provisions.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
private is more.
All right, so go
inclusive
back
of
to
what we want.
private.
I wouldn't want anybody, getting around this because they're
Right, becoming a
labeled as
nonprofit.
nonprofit.
Just found the link.
I see it. Okay.
It is
So,
posted on the GCP website. So
looks like Cameron's gonna add that in as a note. Next sentence was something that was added. I believe this came from Michelle. So we just wanted to highlight the new additional recommendations. And obviously the red font is not every single change. We also had sent the comparison document, but for ease of reading, we thought it would be helpful to kind of highlight in red the major changes. Does anybody have any comments or concerns about?
This red one was from Michelle.
I believe so. I might be wrong about that.
I think it is. And then you want to scroll down, Cameron? And then there's a few more on the next page. I think some of these are also from Matthew. Thank you. Me. Any comments from any of our members? We're almost done. You sure? Okay. And you want to scroll down? This is great. So and then we added some nice synopses towards the end about reviews of what the meetings were like. And we added some language for the last two at the end. But I didn't see any comments on that from anyone. Oh, it looks like Matthew, you may have had an update. We took out Kristen Dowdy for the November 18th one. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe Kristen was scheduled to come, but she had a medical illness, and Sarah
Right.
pinch hit for her during that.
I think we'll just have to change the language on the second too, because it says we welcome back Kristen. So we'll have to say welcome back Sarah and then add Kristen on December 2nd.
Yeah, and you can see how to spell Sarah Chmielnicki on the December 2nd entry, Cameron. Okay, do we have any other comments from our members? Did we cover everything?
I think so.
Matt Barrett, do you have a question?
It's not a question. I just wanted to, in the interest of moving things along, since it's 11 o'clock already, I wanted to express to my colleagues on the task force that I intend to vote in support of the task force report. And then just note, just for the, not to be included in the task force report, but we do have a long way to go when in voting in support of it. It's not, I think everybody want to understand, we're not supporting every sentence or every recommendation, but I did want to endorse the report and look forward to continuing to work on these issues as this moves towards legislation, and reserve the right to object to parts if the details become, objectionable at that point. But I did want to note for the record that I intend to vote in support for the report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Any
And
other
for
comments?
the good of the record, I'd like to say something similar to what Matt said, is that AARP intends to support the report, but does reserve the right, for any legislation that emerges from the task force report. We'll have to make independent assessments based on each individual piece of legislation. But thanks.
Thank you.
So Cameron, should we do a roll call vote, or how do you propose?
Allow me to open up a new tab and stop screen sharing, and I can take a roll call vote, certainly.
Thank you. There you all are.
I'm going to take advantage of saying goodbye, everyone. Thank you. It's been very interesting, and thank you for all your work, but I have another Zoom. So thank you. Have a
Thank you,
great
Thank you for
day.
joining us today,
Thank you,
Representative.
Representative.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a list of task force members open here. Michael, if you'd like to just call through, and when you vote, please state your full name just so I can make sure I'm writing it down to the correct person. This is for endorsement of the report.
All right. Are you? I apologize, Cameron. Are you saying I'm supposed to read something? I don't.
Oh, sorry. Actually, I'll call off names. Apologies.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Joan Wilson. Aye.
Joan Wilson, I vote to endorse the report.
Michael Werner.
I also vote to endorse the report.
Matthew Barrett.
Yes, in endorsement of the report.
Stephen Rubin.
I vote in favor of the report.
Anna Dorogazi.
Anna Dorgazi votes to endorse the report.
Michelle Jacob.
Not here.
Not present. Jacqueline Haywood.
She left to go teach a class. Let's do this. Part of my interruption. When we're done with this, you can also send out an email to our members, and we'll keep the roll open, and we'll till, I don't know, like 3 p.m. And then that way, whoever is not present here can still vote one way or the other. Does that sound agreeable to our members? Okay, pardon my interruption. Continue.
Marie Allen,
Marie's not here either.
Laura Stawning,
Laura Stowning, I to endorse the report.
and Matthew Antonetti.
Matthew Antonetti, yes, in favor of the report.
Okay. This vote therefore has 7 yeas, 0 nays, and 3 absent presently. I will send out the voting sheet to all members later for the votes to be kept open until 3 p.m. today.
Thank you. And you'll make whatever the last minute changes are with the financial exploitation quotes put from Matthews. And then after that, maybe you can send that final version of the report out to everyone, including the members who weren't able to be present, so that they can take a peek at it before they vote one way or the other. Cameron,
Certainly.
thank you kindly. Is that it? Are we done? Oh my gosh. Wonderful. Well, thank you to everyone. Actually, I'm going to kick it to Joan first.
Thank you, everyone. I think we came up with a really good report, and hopefully the legislature will decide to take some action on it, because I think it's really important, and the changes that we're proposing are going to really be helpful for the residents of Connecticut. So I appreciate everyone's help, and I feel like we really came together from all different angles, and it's great to see that. And it was a great learning experience for me. I definitely learned a lot. So thank you all for participating.
Thank you. And I'm gonna, before I make my final comments, I want to open it up to any of our members if they have anything else to say before I make that. Anyone? Okay. So I want to echo everything Joan just said. I'm super grateful to everyone. This feels very satisfying to have this team effort, this team process. Everyone was able to make some new contributions into it. And I feel like this is a great report. We know the legislature will receive it well. Thank you again to Representative Garibay and Senator Fazio and Senator Miller for joining us through this process. And I'm very proud of this work, and I'm looking forward to see how it's received. And I think that we came together in the spirit of service, and I'm really grateful to everyone for all of their time and efforts. And one last big shout out to Cameron Clark. Thank you so much for all of your tremendous help with organizing these meetings and helping us get through these different drafts. And my best wishes to everyone with the upcoming legislative session. And we'll keep in touch with each other with the progress and everything, but we will work on transmitting it. We'll have Cameron confirm to everyone when the report's been legally fully transmitted to the legislature, and we can all pat ourselves on the back. So thank you very much, everyone.